On my immediate left is my friend Spenser Meeks from Apex Presentations. And Spenser
Hello.
helps you tell your story through a variety of media, but mostly learn how storytelling can turn your boring story into a compelling one.
Message clarification and storytelling.
Message clarification. I love it. And you've got a little bit of credibility doing this. You've helped most of or all of the speakers for major trade shows that are in competition with this one.
I feel bad naming names at a different trade show, but yeah, RE Plus is one of my greatest joys to work with. I've trained pretty much all of the presenters, all the moderators at that event on how to create better, more effective events for themselves and for their audiences. There's some stats out there that are a little bit astonishing when it comes to something like panels, for instance.
Yeah, like what?
60% of all panels are rated as okay or worse. And if you speak West Coast at all, you know that okay is nice for bad. And so if you're looking at 60% of all of your events as an organizer or as someone who's going to be speaking on a panel or moderating, over half the time is wasted for the audience, for the speaker, for the moderator. That's pretty rough. Yeah. So trying to figure out better approaches to make that a more meaningful experience for everybody involved is always a worthwhile investment.
Yeah. I've been walking around just taking a census of the organizations that we're working with or who I know have a sales force and asking, what is the message or the communication like within your sales team? How do you prepare and plan to help your team communicate something that is essentially science-based? It's a complex sort of science project at its heart. And the overwhelming answer is not well. So we're going to help you. We are going to help you. And the answer is storytelling. The answer is actually, how do you package what you do in a way that grabs attention first? And few that I've met have been able to package it as well as you. So I'd like to unpack that for our audience today. Hopefully, those of you who are here in person can walk away with something that you can use right now. You can use it this week as you're walking around the trade show today and tomorrow, tonight at your networking events. Change up the way that you think and talk about what you do starting now. So, Spenser, could you elaborate a bit on the framework that you've developed and used to help your clients really understand how to set up the story?
Yeah, absolutely. So fundamentally, what we're very good at in this industry is the technical details, the features, the specs, all that stuff. Like, that's phenomenal. The problem with leading with that out of the gate is that fundamentally we know from behavioral economics that emotional engagement is just as important as logic, if not a little bit more so. And that can hurt to hear if you're an engineer, an analyst, or someone that's been a technical leader in this industry that has largely grown and flourished as a direct result of increases in performance and decreasing costs and the like. Anything I'm going to share today does not discount those impacts in any way, shape, or form. I actually, to back up just one step here, I'm a former engineer.
Yeah.
Like, I'm talking about this stuff specifically about storytelling, not because it's nice, not because pretty language is fun. It's because it has direct actual impact. And it's been exhaustively studied what that level of impact is. And I'm happy to share some stats if it's helpful. But the framework that I most consistently work with people on starts with emotional engagement first.
Yes.
Followed by intellectual justification.
Okay, emotional engagement and then intellectual justification.
Yeah.
Did I get the words right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so like, go heart, then go head.
Okay.
Right?
Great. So talk to me about how do you get to the heart as quickly as possible?
Storytelling.
Okay.
That's the shortest way I can put that. Now, when I say storytelling, I mean, what is a specific individual that experienced an obstacle, and what was the solution to that? Right? So that would be an individual story that you can share as a specific example, perhaps as that intro. But you should also be thinking about telling a story in aggregate.
Yeah.
So the emotional engagement first, followed by that intellectual justification. When you're trying to build emotional buy-in initially, best way to do that, characters, setting.
Yes.
Have you seen Lord of the Rings?
I have seen Lord of the Rings.
How many times have you seen Lord of the Rings?
Maybe 3.
Oh, it's solid.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
More? Anybody more? Nerd.
Nice. So the reason I ask is because Lord of the Rings, if you're familiar with it, begins in Hobbiton. It begins with Frodo. It begins with Gandalf. We're just looking at the setting, and we're looking at the people, the characters in that setting. You're bonding with them. They're cool. They're funny. You have a connection. Nothing bad has happened yet. No information is needed and available to start solving.
Yes, no problem.
That problem. No problem, right? We're just bonding. Good vibes.
Yes.
Right? Then something happens. Oh, God. These people that I care about, this beautiful, bucolic landscape in Hobbiton, something horrible is about to go down. Now there's stakes. Not only do we have someone we care about, but now something's happening to them. And so you can do that same thing when it comes to your services or when it comes to your product.
Yeah.
Right? You're doing it for someone. Who are you doing it for? Right? What's happening to them? That sucks.
Yeah.
Great. Start there. And then once you've got that buy-in, now there's a relevant place for you to show up. And that's why we created these large battery products. That's why we've created this software optimization platform that's going to revolutionize distribution, right?
But most of our industry starts the opposite way. The meeting starts and they say, well, would you like me to tell you about the product? And start going into technical specs or asking what specs are you looking for? What are you buying typically? Asking all these buying signals rather than getting them engaged in and why they're there. Can you give me, so you came from Solar World, you understand it, and you and I both have that in common that we sold solar modules. Give me an example maybe that's tied to someone that wants to sell solar modules to a potential prospect, a developer. Like, how do you start that conversation when you know they're just going to try to beat you up on price at the end of the day and they're going to ask if you...
And especially as an American, organization, the last thing you want to start talking about is price out of the gate, right? So there it's important to start, any sort of sales conversation really about confirming, so it sounds like you set up a conversation with us today to talk about this because you're concerned about X or Y. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah.
Right? Opening up the gate by getting people's buy-in and their input first and making them feel heard and validated. Oh my God, that's like 90% of the struggle straight out.
Yeah.
Because when it comes down to differentiation, especially for panels, it's a little bit of a commodity at this point. And I'm sorry if that hurts to hear, but it's true. So how do we build that differentiation?
Yeah.
Part of it is the engagement process. So making sure that they're heard. One of the things that I see more often than I think anybody would prefer is maybe do a great job at getting an opportunity to talk with someone. Oh my God, you have a connection to a conference or you've got a lead inbound from your website. Fantastic. Let's set up a demo conversation or let's set up a sales conversation. So you got a half an hour, you got an hour with someone. The last thing you want to do is pitch slap them.
Yes. I love that term.
So you've got an hour, you talk at them nonstop for 50 minutes, and then at the very end, you ask them if they have any questions. Well, guess what? They're already gone. Like you're doing a webinar.
Yes.
I have sat through these presentations before. They lose 75% of their attendees. They just turn off their camera.
Yes.
And then they log off.
Yes.
Or they stick around for the Q&A. And you know what questions they have? Statements.
Yes.
They just want to tell you about why you're wrong.
Oh, yes.
That's not the kind of engagement you're looking for.
Actually, that's a great point because one of the things that we've talked about is how to set the conversation up so that you don't plant seeds early in the conversation to make them start to question the validity of your argument.
Yes.
And what you introduced earlier is the sort of the rising and falling action Freytag's pyramid. Like Disney has made an entire so industry around building the story framework. Let's go through a typical sales call and talk through maybe the story arc, where to start, and how to get someone engaged. And this is as much when someone walks up to your booth as when they join you on a sales call, because it's the same. They're giving you the same entree. They're giving you the same acceptance. You have 30 seconds to get their attention, or they're checked onto their email or whatever.
Yeah. So establishing relevance rapidly is the cornerstone of any conversation, right? And a little bit of actually the title of the conversation today. So we talked about this very briefly. It's talking to them initially and saying, like, getting that buy-in. So it sounds like you were here to talk about X. Is that true? Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Like, getting them talking first is core.
Right.
Because otherwise, we're making assumptions.
Yes.
Like people often feel that it's necessary to have a sales deck on who we are, what we do, how long we've been around, how many employees we have, the square footage of our facility, and
statement of qualifications.
Right. Well, unfortunately, you have about a minute and a half to establish relevance, or people check out.
Yes.
And it's way harder to get people back once they've checked out than it is to just kind of stick with them out of the gate.
Yeah.
I have a mentor. He used to be the VP of internal communications at Intel. And one of the singular most impactful openings that you can have is start with, what are you going to talk about? Very high level. Second thing, why it's important to them.
Yes.
Third, what the opportunity is for them if they act on what we're going to talk about today. And then lastly, what's at stake if they don't? A little bit of that FOMO.
This is like starting out a presentation.
Yes. So fundamentally, starting out a presentation. I know we're talking about sales conversation, but like getting them to talk, getting that buy-in, and then saying like, great, A, B, C, D.
Sure.
Well, then what we're going to talk about today is X.
Yeah.
Why I think this is relevant to you is Y. Now, again, I can connect that directly to what you just told
ideally
me.
Tying it back to what they've just told you is why they joined the call.
Oh my God.
Or why they walked up to your booth.
Yeah. How validating is that? Right? Not only did someone hear me when I was telling them about what my needs were, but then they're going to directly address it.
Yes. What gets me is how simple it is, how we all have heard 10 podcasts on this topic, and yet conversations begin, and 15 minutes later, you're stuck in this routine. You're stuck in this cycle. How do you help clients break that routine?
A lot of it boils down to changing your perspective. And what I mean by that is it's a little tricky to talk about yourself without talking about yourself. It's all about your audience's perspective, what the value is for them, rather than our capabilities, our process. We are the best solution you could potentially ever imagine. Like that kind of chest thumping doesn't get you very far. So it's all about making sure that you're paying close, direct attention to their needs, their desires, validating that, and actively listening. So shaking yourself out of that. I mean, if you're tired of people's eyes glazing over when you're talking to them, or getting frustrated by the amount of times that people don't quite get what you do, it takes a little bit of work.
Yes.
And it's important. I mean, how many times have you seen the quote about like, hey, it's, I'm sorry for the length of the letter. If I had more time, I would have written something shorter.
Yeah.
It takes work to do it well.
Yeah. So one of the premises and promises here of folks that are taking time to tune in is one-liners. How can you quickly communicate that message? Are there anchors or phrases that you've found have more success? I've heard you use one already.
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of, I believe it's Donald Miller, the story brand. Right. One of his approaches that he recommends is basically a one-liner breaks down into 4 fundamental pieces.
Okay.
First is, who's your audience? What is the problem they're experiencing? What do you do at a very high level? And then lastly, what is the promised land that they can get to?
Yeah.
So starting off, why do we talk about the audience first? So for me, this would be most technical professionals.
Yes.
Greatly struggle with giving engaging presentations.
Yes.
So the reason I say technical professionals is because hopefully the person I'm talking to, best case scenario, they identify as a technical professional. So immediately, guess what? That's relevant to them.
Yes.
Or if it's not them, let's say we're a solar panel manufacturer. You know how most utility developers really struggle to find powerful panels? I'm filling the blank there.
Sure.
Okay. Well, if they're not a utility scale developer, they're immediately going to want to put a face to that.
Yes.
Or put you in their mind next to somebody who is.
Yes.
Well, guess what? You're flagging a potential introduction to that group.
Yes.
Or to that individual.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's why first piece is critical. High level problem. This is exactly what we just talked about when it came to that story arc. Who are we talking about? What's the problem? So now that key audience you just identified, what's the issue? Lastly, what's the solution to that problem? So you at a high level, so like I work on message clarification and storytelling.
Yes.
I'm not going into, well, it's workshops, it's individual coaching, it's asset development. It's like, We all have to solve 100 problems to solve one. So appropriately keeping it high level is pretty good there. And the last piece is that good feeling. Like, where do you get to if you do it the right way?
Yeah. One of the things that folks I find get tripped up in is they want to get into, along the lines of pitch slapping, they want to get into this sort of brainstorming rather than providing a direct, addressable solution, a singular action, right? It's like on a website, you only want one call to action.
Yep.
How do you tie that back to conversations and where we often see pitfalls in particular technical presentation?
This is a bit of an extension on that. You have to solve 100 problems to solve one.
Yeah.
Where it's prioritization and trying to give someone something specific to follow up on means that they're going to be that much more likely to do it.
Yes.
The spray and pray approach of trying to say as many things as possible, hoping that one of those sticks for your audience has the exact opposite effect. People's short-term memory is only about 3 to 5 new ideas or concepts.
Yeah.
If you go more than that, you're actually knocking out earlier ideas or diluting what could have stuck otherwise. So very intentionally prioritizing like what is that people could act on or would have the biggest bang for their buck if and you're lucky, they start doing one thing, what would have the highest impact for them? And the answer to that question is going to vary depending on who you're talking to, about what.
Yep.
But again, that's where active listening really plays a core role in something like a networking conversation at a conference, for instance.
When you are teaching about how to improve your presentations, what are some of the, we don't have a presentation deck here, but what are some of the instruments that you employ? How do you help folks think through specifically presentations and how to use them more effectively?
When you're talking about presentations, are you talking about like specifically graphic design and like a deck as an asset?
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking about how to organize the information as well as how to, if there are specific design tips that you give to capture attention and like the organization of the information is kind of how I'm thinking about it.
Well, so I guess I would split that into two sides of the same coin.
Sure.
The first one is narrative sequence.
Yep.
What do you say in what order?
Yep.
And the second thing would be slide design fundamentals.
Yep.
Both of those can go sideways. Both of those can derail conversations and presentations. The first one, very simply put, is that emotional arc followed by intellectual justification. What does that mean? Who's involved? What's the problem? Single big idea.
Sure.
And now the fundamentals of how your solution solves that problem through that big idea and a simple, clean, clear call to action.
Are each of those a separate slide?
Yes, or multiple.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
There's have you ever heard of Guy Kawasaki?
Yes.
Yeah, so a luminary for those of you that aren't familiar.
I've heard Guy give the presentation I think you're going to talk about.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, so he was starting to get nosebleeds from listening to pitches time and time again. And so he came up with something called the 10-20-30 rule, which honestly I live and die by even outside of pitching to investors. The idea is 10 slides, 20 minutes max, 30-point font minimum.
Yes. Mm-hmm. It even has a formula for how old your audience is and how much bigger the font has to be.
Well, that's the curb cut effect. That's one of my favorite things in the world, right?
Yeah.
If you design for accessibility for those that have the least ability to access that, you actually make it more accessible for everyone.
Right.
I mean, how many people here currently watch any kind of media with the subtitles on?
Oh, yeah.
Right. And default on now for a lot of those things. Yeah. So we do that not because necessarily we're like all hard of hearing, although it has become a little bit more difficult in media to actually make that out because of audio mixing. But we do it because it makes it actually easier.
Yeah.
Great. What's not to love about that? So that's the 30-point font piece in particular. But coming back to the 10-20-30, 10 slides. 10 slides means 10 ideas.
Yeah.
Sometimes organizations find out about this and they're like, oh my God, every one of our presentations is like 30 slides already. We're going to cut this and like, okay, mandatory, only 10 slides per any presentation. You know what happens?
It's death by bullet point.
Yep. And it's 25 ideas in 10 slides instead of 25 ideas in 25 slides, which actually is even less productive.
Yes.
So less is more. There's always, anytime you talk to me, simplification is going to be the cornerstone of any sort of engagement.
Yep.
The 20-minute rule is really for like pitching to investors.
Yeah.
You can spend more time than that, but a really important piece to highlight there is like TED Talks are only 15 minutes max for a reason.
Yes.
That is
attention span.
Exactly. And anywhere beyond that, it's hard to maintain it. So interactivity is core to that. If you're going to talk longer than 10, 15 minutes.
Well, if you're going to have a 30-minute sales call, which is the average sales call, you want half of it to be a conversation, not a pitch slap.
Right. And that's the weird dichotomy of presentations is that ostensibly it is one person talking to many people and it's like one directional.
Yeah.
But the reason you're doing a presentation is you're trying to build a relationship.
Right.
So necessarily and ideally, it should be a discussion, a dialogue. There should be interplay.
Yeah.
You know, how many people have worked here in the industry for X number of years?
Right.
Informal polls, formal polls. It's the best way that you can get information about the group that you're trying to actually engage with in the first place. So that feeds back. It's a healthy cycle, good communication.
Yeah. Are there mnemonics? Like, are there ways that you teach to stop, ask questions, engage throughout? Like, one of the things that we do is about halfway through, if we'll say something is maybe a metric of the audience that we reach, and I will usually say, does that resonate with you?
Always good to check in. Like, absolutely.
Yeah.
And if you get a long pause, maybe it's worth going over something again and making sure that, like, does that matter to you guys? Are you currently working on that? Ask a more direct question.
Yeah. What about folks who lean too much on the presentation as the core asset in the meeting or in the call, rather than being able to go off script? Do you find that certainly technical folks tend to use the presentation as the script? Like having a normal conversation is hard.
Well, even salespeople can be guilty of that too. It's not even just technical people, but what you don't want a deck to be is the whole conversation.
Yeah.
And
just that's what I'm getting to as well.
It becomes, the risk is that having those bullet points on there in particular, it becomes a teleprompter for you as opposed to an illuminating asset for your audience.
Yeah.
Like, it should be there to help them build understanding. MIT actually studied this. Graphs are 300% more impact than just raw data that's shared on a slide.
A graph.
Yep. So instead of having like a data table, which again is a little bit overloading on the amount of information you have to process, how do we show that visually? And, graphs are an obvious example of that. Maps are a fantastic tool as well. But I guess to come back to your question here about, how do we prevent our over-reliance there? Use the notes section. Oh my God.
Yes.
Like, if you're on a digital conference call, which, I mean, how many of us have most of our meetings online now?
Yes.
Right? Thank you, COVID, and everything in between. Use the tools that are at your disposal. Instead of putting bullet points on every one of your slides, grab 90% of that, put it in your speaker notes section. Only you can see it.
Yep.
So it helps you. At the same time, it doesn't dilute what your audience is trying to engage with.
Yeah, they shouldn't be reading the slide and hearing you say it at the same time. Kawasaki also says, like, have one main point on the slide. Talk to your audience, not at them. Like, you're not reading for them. They all learn how to read. That's why you make the font so big. He also says that a lot of the studies they did, he's also on the board of Canva. They've done a ton of research around how to craft the right presentation. Is it still prevailing wisdom that like blue and yellow are the best combination? That doesn't work so well for companies that don't have blue and yellow, but is there like a color combination design aesthetic that you found works better?
Oh man, I have some opinions on this, but I am not a graphic designer. I'm a narrative and live messaging guy, so I'll leave it to other people that are better at that than me. What I will say is that making something easy on the eyes, like a little bit of darker backgrounds with lighter text, can help us to like reduce the amount of Zoom fatigue that we get.
Black slide, white text? No.
Yeah, I mean, that's a little bit harsher, but leaning that direction can be helpful. If you're struggling to figure out, best practices when it comes to like color palettes and the like, there's a litany of different YouTube videos you can watch. And I'm sure if you're of any sort of substantial size organization, you've got a marketer or two that is dyed-in-the-wool authorities on that kind of thing, and lean into your brand clearly.
So as we're really focusing on not just presentation skills but storytelling, you mentioned Donald Miller and Story Brand. I don't want you to give away all your IP and secrets, but are there resources that you find yourself routinely turning your clients towards and insisting they read because it's fundamental to understanding how to do this better? While you think about it, I'll give one that I used to keep close to the vest because it was one of those things that I just felt like, I don't really want everybody to know this because we make a living building stories. But Matthew Dix is the Grand Slam champion of the Moth Story Hour.
Yeah.
And he wrote a book called Story Worthy that, in my opinion, is the single best book on storytelling ever written. And I love Donald Miller, and I think that anybody building a website or building a deck should think about story brand, because the framework that he's put together is beautiful. But if you haven't listened to, as I do, or read, as those of you who have the attention span for it, the book Story Worthy, I highly recommend it. And he really unpacks the art of storytelling in that book.
When it comes, thanks for giving me a moment to collect my thoughts. I would definitely like to sink my teeth into that book, and then not do this in future as well. But there's two authors, both women, that I find to be crazy compelling when it comes to constructing effective presentations.
You're going to share it.
The first one is Nancy Duarte. She has some of the most highly viewed TED Talk videos of anyone in the world when it comes to presentations. She talks about the spark line, which is kind of like future state, current state, future state, how to create that texture and differentiation. And she is more of this graphic design first person. So her book, Resonate, should live on your shelf if you do anything having to do with presentations.
Fantastic.
Or you need to construct them. The second person that I will say...
I'm surprised he's sharing this, by the way.
Oh, God. I'm in this industry because I want you to not suffer through what you have, right?
Yes.
So please go. These books are not my own. These are resources that are readily available. The second person that I will tell you to run after, and especially in the context of sales, is April Dunford.
She has given the goods today.
She's fantastic. And this is one of the most up-to-date, practical, sequential frameworks for constructing specifically a sales pitch.
Yes.
And it is balm to my soul because it is really useful in a B2B context, a business-to-business sales context.
Yeah.
A lot of times when I'm talking to technical professionals that are in these roles, they struggle to find a sense of authenticity when it comes to doing sales and marketing, right? Who do we all think about when we think about sales? Like a used car salesman. We think about getting manipulated into doing something new. It doesn't feel good. And so none of us want to exert our will over somebody else, which is great, right? That's a good flag that you're a good person.
Yeah.
So how do we do this in a healthy, productive manner? Well, it's by positioning yourself as a guide, as a well-informed guide. Nobody's an authority on buying high-power battery systems out of the gate, right?
Yeah.
Maybe they're a developer and they've been thinking about it, and that would be great. So when they come to you, the last thing that they want to get asked is hey, what are you looking for in a battery? It's I'm not sure. Let me go do a lot of exhaustive research. Well, guess what? There's tons of marketing material that's conflicting in every right. So they're going to come back to you with the same question, which mostly consists of what should I be asking myself?
Yes,
and if you can help them navigate that process in a more comfortable, confident way, boy howdy.
Yes. Well, the book is called Sales Pitch, April Dunford.
Yes.
Surprised that you shared that, because I know that's something that is one of the grail for you on how you think about creating that experience for your own customers. I'm going to do likewise. I'm going to follow your lead here. Book I shared with you recently is called They Ask, You Answer. And in the world of creating your sales pitch, the book Sales Pitch helps you think about how to tell that story. But exactly what you just said, your customers all have questions and you have answers. The question is, how do you create an environment where they become so convinced that you have all the answers that they want to buy from you? They don't want to do it themselves. This guy was a pool salesman, and he literally wrote the book on how to create a blog around answering all the questions for your customers so they come to you to buy a pool instead of someone else. This is content marketing 101.
SEO.
And how to build SEO around it. And it's amazing to me, what you do when you describe to someone what the process is you convince them that you're the right person to work with. A lot of folks want to hold that information to their chest. They don't want to tell the secret sauce. And instead, a lot of the professionals that we're working with, we create compelling content.
Yeah.
Lo and behold, they don't want to create compelling content. They want to create trackers and modules, and they want to know that I know what I'm doing, and that you know what you're doing, so they can hire us to do that for them.
Fundamentally, like as a consultant,
yes,
the tools are out there.
Yes.
The information is out there. You're welcome to go and read 10, 20, 30 books on presentations if you want. If you want to do it fast, if you want to do it well today, that's why you hire a consultant to do this kind of thing. That's why you would interact with someone like me. Go read the book. If you're having trouble actually trying to fit your bits and pieces into the sales pitch framework, come talk to me.
That is exactly what I say to folks all the time. And in fact, the customers that we've gotten most often that we work with on content strategy are the ones who've read the book and they're like, all right, I'm ready to do this.
Right, exactly. You drank the Kool-Aid, but the implementation part or where do we come up with the hours for our personnel that may not already be experts in that arena. We'd much rather have the asset already built and have you train our team that's going to be executing it on how to do this well. So like primarily the way that I show up is either we're getting stuck on what do we say or how do we say it. And so you can navigate both those pieces, and you need both of them. You can have a gorgeous, perfectly narratively cohesive slide deck, but if you speak over it in a monotone and you never change your pacing, it's going to go nowhere.
Oh, yes. We should do a webinar on webinars.
As you know, as far as professions get, mine is fairly meta. Yes. So yeah, let's do it.
Well, if folks want to get out of the meta and they want to get practical, how can they get in touch with you?
Best place is probably LinkedIn. You can find me Spenser Meeks. That is SPENSER. Or you can find me at apexpresentations.com. I'll give anyone and everyone a half an hour free consult who mentions this podcast and any kind of outreach. And I'd be more than happy to learn more about where messaging is working and where it's getting stuck for you and your audience.
Absolutely. I can tell you that time is not free. So there you have it. If you are a Suncast listener or if you're in the audience here at Intersolar and you want to tighten up your message, I've twisted Spenser's arm. He's going to give you a half hour of his time on me. So I appreciate you taking the time to come out and help us tighten up our message, and look forward to hearing how all of you all present better as a result. Thank you for taking time to be here with us, and let us know how it goes. Please reach out to us and let us know how you are using this information and how it helps you move the ball forward. That's all. That's what matters for us.
Thank you so much.